Because workshops are, right. Okay, well, while you're setting up, we did add something else to the agenda. We're going to start a couple minutes early because we're going to take advantage of the informality. Now, I am going to propose a resolution to advertise for sealed bids. Let me stop for a second. I don't have to do any, we open up the meeting or anything like that to do a resolution.
I would just like this.
Great,
I call the
thank you.
meeting of February 27th, 2022 order. There we go.
Hey, you know what?
Okay.
I think I'm starting to learn delegation, Bill. Well, thank you very much, Barb. All right, for the workshop, where usually it's not, we're going to do this resolution, and I'll explain why in a minute. I propose a resolution to advertise for sealed bids for the Ridge Road, New York State Route 404 multi-model corridor project, PIN number 4760.98, the installation of materials for sidewalks, curbs, and traffic light modifications. This bid will be advertised and available on March 4th, 2020.
Brandon Flaherty.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, since it is only 25 after, I'm now going to give a 30-second, I think I can do that, explanation of what we just did. There is sidewalks going up on Ridge, Empire Ridge?
From 5 Mile Line Road to roughly Jackson Road.
Correct. Thank you, Jeff.
Sorry,
Okay.
didn't get it up.
And because it is grant money,
Correct.
there's very strict timelines, and we have to advertise for bids from contractors for at least 3 weeks leading up to March 31st.
By their fiscal year ends the end of March. So
Thank you.
They need to have everything in place before the fiscal year ends.
Thank you. So we really need to get this in the newspaper, which is, I think, the Webster Herald, the local rag.
We're also going to send it to the contract reporter where most contractors find these jobs. Yes, we're doing both.
I'm over 30 seconds now, Jeff.
Oh, I got it.
No, you're doing a better job of this. But that is what we just, as a board, agreed to do, and I'm sure everybody in this town is glad that we did that, because I've heard that some people like sidewalks in this town. There's a couple.
I would also like to add that this is something that Councilman Abbott has been working on for many, many years to bring this to fruition. So, Bill, I'm sure this is a wonderful moment that we're actually going out for bids on this.
Finally.
Yes, exactly.
But that's how the state works. I mean, it takes forever.
Well, thank you for having the stick-to-itiveness to see it through.
And I think in the future, when I say I'm going to do a 30-second explanation, should I have Bill do it for me?
It would be much more precise.
I bet you he can do less than 30 seconds. Okay. Duly noted. You're up.
Can I get one of my colleagues to click the mouse for me?
Thanks for getting it.
Maybe I should get the other side. Can I start anytime?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm Sarah Compter, for those of you who don't know me. I've been serving on the ProSAR committee for 6-ish years, I think since 2014. And we're here to talk about a topic that has come up at least every year since I've served on the committee. And we've evaluated a lot of different situations and solutions for this, and we're looking for both some guidance and support from the town board today. So we're going to deliver a short parks maintenance report and identify some challenges we have. So first and foremost, I certainly can say this after 10 years of living here, which is short, I think, in Webster, for most Webster residents, that it's an awesome place to live, right? We have a tremendous number of facilities, parks, open space, fields. Some of the stats up here, right? We have over 1,000 acres of open space and 32 athletic fields and facilities, an arboretum, which is certainly a claim to fame in our county. No one, I think, would argue that this is a tremendous place for green space and being outdoors. But we have to take care of these parks and fields and playgrounds and facilities. And after much analysis, both on the part of Mark and his team and also the ProSAR committee, we've estimated that there's about $4 million in deferred parks maintenance at this point. So everything from parking lots that have to be rechipped to security cameras that we really need to install to really dangerous situations like flooded trails and uneven gym floor in the facility on Chiota Drive. We've got rusted and broken fencing. We've got dugouts that are bound to create a problem for some child in the near future if we're not careful. And all of these things add up to quite a bit of money. So, you know, on the ProSAR committee, we're starting to feel a little bit like we're living beyond our means in Webster. These are just a few of the photos that we have on file now. We've got a picture of a dugout. Which park is that, Mark? Empire. At Empire Park, thank you. We've got our gym floor there, just different broken pieces throughout our facilities. Some of these are unsightly. A lot of them are dangerous, which is obviously a bigger concern.
When I walk around the gym, you have, at one time I almost saw lights come through the door, up and stop on the bottom, up and right side. I want to point that out. We can see the door there in the picture right there in the middle.
This here.
Yep,
Up here.
right up there.
Yeah.
And you can see the rusted out spots over here.
So we're here because we need your help. We see there being really 3 objectives. One is that we need to save. Just like any fiscally responsible household, we have to budget, right? We've only got so much money coming in. There's only so much money that can go out, and we have to budget appropriately. We need to maintain. Obviously, we have to take care of our facilities so that we can tout Webster as the awesome place to live that it is, and so that people keep wanting to come live here in our community. And then, of course, we need to think about limiting where we're investing funds for new parks and new facilities when we're not really taking care of what we have. So, one of the things we want to point out is that the Parks and Recreation Department, thus far headed by Mark, well, how many more days? 15 days, Mark? Has managed to have a surplus of $1.2 million over the last 6 years. Historically, that surplus rolls into I might be using the wrong term here, so forgive me, but the general fund that goes to sort of even things out amongst other departments. And one of the questions the ProSAR committee has had is, why can't we use that surplus to help pay for all of this maintenance that we have? Another question is the Parks Land Trust Fund. Currently, this is used to fund new purchases of land, but perhaps we need to think about using this as a maintenance savings account, so to speak, as well.
Yeah.
So, we've got sort of three big solutions. I just mentioned the first 2, right? One would be capital reserve fund, taking that surplus that we have in the Parks and Recreation budget every year and actually allowing that to be maintained as a fund for Parks and Recreation specifically for long-term maintenance. That 1.2 million that Mark's team saved over the last 6 years could have put a big dent in the $4 million that we have in deferred maintenance. So in the interest of putting that money to use inside the Parks and Recreation Department, we thought let's establish a capital reserve fund to help fund that maintenance. Secondly, as I mentioned, the trust fund, allocating a percentage of that Parks Land Trust Fund to help fund maintenance could be an option for us in the future. And then, frankly, we need to do better forecasting, right? Citizens clamor for new facilities, right? Our community members want beautiful parks and playgrounds. They want great athletic facilities for their children to play sports at. You know, they want the wonderful trails we have. But we need to think about the total cost of ownership, right? It's not just purchasing and building those facilities, right? But we have to think about what is that facility or that trail or that athletic facility going to cost us year after year after year after year, right? Most of us are probably homeowners. We know we have to think about those things in our homes. You buy a home and you know that your roof's only going to last so long, right? You know that after some years you're going to have to replace that floor in the den where the dog runs across, 97 times a day scratching it up. So we need to really think about what the long-term ownership cost is of all of these facilities and be strategic before we invest in additional property or additional land. So, from our perspective, the status quo is a bit too risky at this point. We already see major problems emerging with this deferred maintenance. We're very concerned about where the future is going to lead us. And so we really need your commitment to help us figure out where we go from here. We've offered a few solutions that we've come up with in our committee. And what we're asking you tonight is really what challenges those solutions might present. In other words, why might they not be feasible? Is there any reason we couldn't commit to opening that capital reserve fund and funding it through the surplus? Two, maybe you guys have considered alternatives or potential solutions to this problem that we're not aware of. And we'd be eager to hear what thoughts you have on that. And three, given this presentation and our efforts to kind of prepare this and bring this forward, we really hope that we could get some kind of feedback from you guys within the next couple of months. Can we get that capital reserve fund established so that the 2020 surplus, should there be one, could go to some of this deferred maintenance? Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so I just want to, my name is Joe Montequito. I am the chairperson for the COSAR committee. And, we, as the COSAR members, you see here, we identify there's a problem. We need monies ready to refurbish, some of our capital investments here that we have to keep things going. And we feel that if we don't do that, right, how we're going to attract more people coming to our town, to use our facilities. I mean, it's starting to decapitate, so to speak. And we want to bring that to your attention so we can work on some plans how we can turn it around and fix all this stuff. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem during the year. You guys want to add anything?
Fellow committee members, do you have any other comments, or shall we open it to the board for questions? Mark?
No, go ahead.
Do you guys have any thoughts, questions? Barry, our representative or our liaison.
Mark, I see that over 6 years we have $1.2 million in surplus, and we've talked about using some of that surplus possibly at the end of the year to head towards maintenance, and originally we were told that that was not going to be possible. But I was wondering, is there any way, if we're averaging $200,000 left over at the end of the year, why aren't we just budgeting $200,000 into our budget for maintenance?
Well, every year is different, Barry, as you know, doing budgets, particularly with recreation and parks. Some years we go through and we get a lot better. So we start our budgeting, but let's go back to starting in June. So you're starting to look at what's it going to cost in June, and then you say, well, what is it going to be next January or whatever when I order the piece of equipment or whatever the case may be. You better add some more percentage to it. Then you go and you do the bidding process, you get a better deal. So when you start a budget as early as 6 months before you even get to using it, I feel like trying to do that with your house. You know, it's difficult to do. The other thing that happens is if you look at my budget, it's got a ton of lines in it. So the overage in each line, percentage-wise, is very small. But when you add up those small percentages, there tends to be a decent dollar amount. This year, for example, I was looking at the budget earlier. We spent, I think, somewhere $10,000, $12,000 less in gas and electric this year. So why did that happen? We had a cool summer. We didn't use as much. So there's $10,000 that would have been spent a year before. Those types of things. So it's difficult to get that to be that way. So I think one of the problems that we've had is that the budget, when there's that overage, we've had this conversation in the past, goes directly into the general fund to fund other budgets that are always over budget. And the other problem is when we do go into budgeting, every year we got a 2% tax cap, you're not going over that. So when you add in healthcare and a few other things, there's no money left. I mean, it's gone.
So your preference would be for this board to possibly take a resolution to utilize any funds that are left over and designate them into a parks maintenance fund.
Well, and there's other towns that do that. Harrington does that, Penfield does that, so that way they can keep up with their maintenance piece in all their parks and facilities. If you just take a look at the recreation center, we do a pretty good job of putting money in there for maintenance every year. If you walk in there, it doesn't look a whole lot different than it did when we opened it 9 years ago. On the other hand, you look at the gymnasium, and they had pictures of it up there. We never touched that during the construction phase. That floor is actually dangerous the way it's peeled off. If you're going to do that gym, the floor itself's $100,000, but the whole gym needs to be redone. You're going to have to spend 150, 200 grand and repaint it and refurbish it and take care of those doors. The door frames are all steel. They're all rotted out on the bottom. We've put in foam in there to prevent the wind from coming through it. So 78, that gym was built in 78. So there's all those expenses there to bring that up to par, and it's a big number all the way across the board when you start looking at. Take a look at our lodges. Liberty Lodge is 15, 16 years old. There's going to be some things that need to be done to that. And same with even the Arboretum. When we built Miracle Field, the town board required that organization to contribute $20,000 a year to a fund so they can replace the cost of that field. The field surface, when we purchased it, was $204,000. I said in 12 years, you better have about $300,000 in the bank ready to do that. And that was something that you, as the board, said, hey, you know what? We can't do this. Look what we did with Basket Road. When we did Basket Road, when we sat in those meetings, I asked them, how much do I need to save a year? $50,000 to replace the carpet. The answer from the board was no, we're not going to do that. So consequently, that goes away. I mean, so again, you build, but you got to save to be able to put the money back into it for the infrastructure.
I agree with you. One thing I have a question about as far as the trust fund. Charlie, maybe you can help me out with this. Are we allowed to use any of that trust fund for maintenance?
I don't know. I was just talking to Paul about that. This thing just existed. I had no part in it. The creation of it and the law.
There's a
General
possibility.
municipal law handles these kinds of funds, generally speaking. I don't know, Mark, do you know anything about the parks?
I've always been told that it needed to be used for new acquisitions or
Capital.
new buildings. You could use it to build a rec center or build another playground or those types of things, capital new. So the idea of the trust fund is that you have so many people moving into town, and as more people move in, you need more recreational facilities, and that money is there to help build those facilities for the additional folks moving into town. It really isn't there for maintenance, if you will.
And pretty specific.
And they are, and that's a legislative deal that was done with the legislature, so.
What I wanted to point out that there was a
State-
possibility that that may not be possible,
Understood.
okay? Some of our funds that we have are very specific, that you can only use it for certain things, and maintenance doesn't seem to be one of
And,
them.
and so you may be able to take, let's just say, for example, you may be able to take and say, well, you know, a playground needs to be replaced. There's more people that moved into the community, we're gonna make it larger. Could you make the argument that, yeah, you can take it out of that because it's bigger and, you know, you're making it larger for more people being in the community? You probably could do that. If you're gonna use it to take and just paint it and do a few little things, I don't think that's
Maybe like
what's.
replacement, but not repair.
Like you demolish a restaurant.
Yeah,
I don't know if the board remembers or not, but in this year's budget, we did start an effort to save some money. The money that we used to have budgeted for the maintenance of Yankee Stadium is now in a line for maintenance.
Yeah, it's about 25,000.
25,000,
something like
that's very little, but at least we have a line item now.
Very evident, whatever the surplus is definitely going to help, right? But we still have that $4 million that we still have to take care of. And, you know, we have a list of what, you know, prioritize and what needs to be done and what those approximate amounts are. So yes, the surplus, putting that back into is gonna help, but we still.
Do you have copies from the board?
I do, yeah.
I didn't bring it.
I got a question, it might be more for Paul. Paul Adams is our finance director, so I don't have the town budget in front of me. Total budget this year for Parks and Rec.
About
can't-
2.2,
Yeah, you would probably know more than I would.
2.2
That sounds
million.
about right.
2.1.
right about there.
2.1 Parks and Rec.
Yeah, but don't forget,
And-
you have to factor in employee benefits,
Yeah, it does have the benefit.
which is in a separate
It's
section.
just on
Okay. Parks and Rec is one of our more unique departments in that it has revenue generation.
Yeah, so can I say something real quick? Out of that 2.2, almost $1 million of revenue comes in. So the actual cost to the taxpayer is about 1.1 million, which is a whole lot less than the 2.2.
Then you answered my question. So I'm gonna go, because obviously, if it's run a surplus, if $2.2 million has come in, or whatever, a year, we don't have the 6-year trend. 1,000,001 coming from revenue, from fees and all that, and 1.1 million coming from taxpayers, okay? It's run at an expense run of 2 million, because we brought 2.2 million into the department from a combination of the revenue and fees and what the board in the budget, am I wrong yet? I just want to make sure I understand this. 1.1 million comes in from the budget, from the taxes, and it's run as a $200,000 surplus each year, the last 6 years.
On average.
I mean,
On average.
Well, I
Okay.
haven't calculated that.
What do you think is the variable that most affects that $200,000 average? Where some years it's up to 250,
Well,
some years it's
it's
down 150. Is it totally geared toward the revenue?
No, it's some of it's revenue, but a lot of it ends up, so there's money in my budget to do some maintenance, if you will, in our parks, particularly with parking lots and drainage, and so the highway department's supposed to do that. Now, we have to pay them to do that. So there's money put in my budget every year for them to do so much maintenance, and every year we get to a point in the year where, you know, Joe's going, I'm booked out, I can't do anymore, I'm not gonna be able to get to it. Perfect example is, there's about 30,000, and it's probably more than that now, to redo the parking lot over at the barn in the Parks Department. Now, that's been in the budget for 3 years, maybe 4, to get that done. Every year it gets put back in, every year we don't spend that money. So there's other projects that we do the same thing with, because I'll sit down with these guys, with Joe, and say, hey, let's do this, and yeah, I can do it, put money in, and it doesn't get done. Then we do it all over again next year.
To that point, have you ever considered, because for whatever reasons, he gets busy or doesn't have time. Have you ever considered bidding that out?
Sure, but it'd be a lot more
A lot
money.
more money.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever solicited bids? Well, I understand it'd be more. money.
Yeah, we looked at, you know, having somebody come in and build a parking lot, and it was like twice as much or more than what we were gonna have Joe do it for.
So as it deteriorates and deteriorates and deteriorates, and at the end of the day, it's gonna, you know,
It doesn't matter, so Joe can come in and tear the whole thing out, he can put a brand new one in. I can hire you to come in and do it, and
I'll do
now,
it less.
now you're gonna pay prevailing wage rates, and your costs are gonna go up because of that. So the actual cost is cheaper to have, Joe do it, especially when he can buy, asphalt at a lesser price than you can, as a private contractor.
listen, I'm just throwing ideas.
Oh, no, listen, I totally agree, but if you have to go that route, then we should budget the additional dollars needed to be able to make sure we get it done.
But the difference is that if you bid it out, you are gonna get it done if you hire a private company to come in and do it. It's not gonna be, at the end of the year, I'm too busy, you can't make it happen, right? So that is the distinction there.
It seems to me that those funds that we budget for maintenance but don't get done at the end of the year would be the perfect amount of money to put into the capital fund or the reserve fund for maintenance, so that when it does need to be done, you have the money available. And I agree with you, I don't think it's a good idea to let it go 4 years. But that money, rather than just rolling back into the general, should be put into that savings account, if you will, for the maintenance. And it doesn't seem to be unreasonable that we, as a board, can discuss and possibly come to an agreement that there's a certain amount of that surplus, if you will, at the end of the year, that should be allocated to a fund like
And
that.
Patty, to that point, it's funny, I have two thoughts on this. I don't mean to be, if I could have run a company that had a 10% profit margin every year after paying everybody, I think I'd still be in the private industry. I wouldn't have sold my company, to be honest with you, because running a $2.2 million revenue, whether it came from fees and taxes, and 6 years in a row creating a $200,000 profit, it's not a bad company. All right, so I applaud you. But now I'm going to turn to Mr. Adams, who just came back from the town's meeting in New York
Association
City.
of Towns.
What's that?
Association of Towns.
Association of Towns. And the state comptroller, and I don't want to speak for the financial expert, is basically starting to move in a direction saying, if you have a large fund balance, extra money, they don't like that.
That's right. They recommended establishing a fund balance policy, which I'll try to work on in the next couple of months.
So this might fit in perfectly to this.
It would. As part of that policy, you would designate how much fund balance would be free to be spent as you wish, and how much would be moved into various reserve funds.
Right.
The park,
And I do
The
We
want
have always
Park capital
operated,
reserve
to
could be
my
one of
knowledge, we have always operated for ever and ever, that there was, the state recommended a percentage
Yeah.
of your total budget to be held in arrears for fund balance, and that was about, what was that, 20%?
generally 2% of your expenditure budget.
2%.
Yeah, they don't like to see it go over that number.
And we were at around 5 million, and we were right on the money the last time.
Okay. But if you have money in reserves, that's not included in that 2%. It's, as long as you have a plan for that money, they don't have an issue with reserves.
So they
If you
differentiate.
have reserves that you never use, they're not happy with that.
Well, we were not to go over that because then we would have too much, and that would be unfairly taxing the residents.
That's right.
So we were given a target number. To my knowledge, we've always been trying to achieve it. In the last 5 years, we've tried to get up to that number.
Yeah.
Gary, I think it's more a situation where the state now is changing their philosophy.
But I think it's important to differentiate between reserve funds and fund balance.
Yes.
Right.
A reserve fund has a designated purpose, a fund balance is the rainy day fund.
That's right.
And also within this, and I know this is where all the non-accountants are like, oh my God, I can't believe we're into this discussion, but just so, one of my favorite lines, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, and I've heard now a couple of times when I came to the ProStar meeting and again tonight, that your $200,000 surplus, you think has gone to subsidize the departments who went over budget. Is that true?
Yes.
I want to make sure, because I don't know if that is accurate to,
Generally, we try to avoid that when we do budget transfers. We try to keep them within the department.
Right.
But then where does it
But-
functionally what happens, right? Where does the 200 go?
I think it'd be rare, but that could happen, but generally doesn't. Yeah,
No, I would disagree with that, Paul. You haven't been here long enough, I would tell you that yes.
I'm just speaking for myself.
I know you are, but I'm
Yeah.
telling you over the years, and Tom needs to know that, it's very plain as day, guys.
Well,
It's gone to take
I
care
think
of
the
other
good news
departments.
is, and I'm gonna go with what Patty said, certainly there's enough information here that justifies 6 year. If you get a $200,000 surplus in 1 year, that's a blip. You have an average for 6 years in 200,000, that's a trend. And I still don't know enough to be dangerous. I don't quite understand how a department in cost accounting, where we're supposed to break even, profits 10% of their budget each year. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I'm gonna tell you, it doesn't average at 200 because there was an anomaly where there was like 300,000 and there was something that and I don't even remember what it was, whether it was a capital purchase that never got done, something crazy happened there. But right now, if you look, right now, I think.
Anomaly of 300,000, take that out of the 1.2, you got 4 years of the other 900,000, that's,
I think there
220,
were,
or, what is that?
I think it was closer to in the 150 range.
Yeah, there was
Okay,
223, 150, 1 year, 319, 167, and 2.
every year there's a surplus.
Yeah, there is,
It's a significant.
And that, from what I've seen with every other department, that is unusual. Now, on one hand, you say, hey, look at how much greater we are as a department than every other one. That may be the case, or it may be the case that, wow, how did these guys get a benchmark of a budget that we increase 2% every year, but they keep kicking out $200,000 surplus?
I don't think it's true, because I think when you factor in employee benefits, you're not making 200,000 a year.
Okay. Well, here's the thing, my own fault for taking us down a rabbit hole of numbers. I should have just stuck with what Patty said. The capital reserve fund, or how that could be done, based on those numbers, and sharpening the pencil and looking at, if they don't have benefits and all that in that number, then we should see. But there seems to be, when you say in the next 60 days, I don't know in the next 60 days, but it certainly as we get into budgeting, which I think budgeting starts in May.
Maybe.
I think this is, for me at least, you got my attention with this. The trust fund thing, I'll look to Charlie to see if that's even an option. I will say this, and I'm interested to get more into Parks and Rec, especially with, I'll be honest, because there's a revenue potential there, that's got my attention to say, I can't wait to get in and see if we can increase that revenue and whatever through marketing and however we can do that, however the town can help on that. But I was at a meeting the other day where one of the departments got a $40,000 bequeathing from someone's will. Well, if you wanted to come out and say it was a library, that's great. And, well, there you have it. It would just seem that I've been over at Parks and Rec slinging hash to the senior citizens, right? I mean, people have a really good feel about the Parks and Rec department. It's one of the shining pieces of all of our departments because it's customer facing to our community. I just wonder if there are, I don't know, I don't mean to be morbid, I wonder if, things like that.
Can I speak to that?
You sure can.
So correct me if I'm wrong, any of Charlie, the legal, you tell me if I'm wrong, but if someone's gonna make that kind of a contribution, typically it goes to a 501c3. So Friends of the Library, I believe there's an Arboretum 501c3, certainly there is Friends of Webster Trails, but that is separate from.
Is there a Friends of Parks and Rec?
Okay, no, and I will tell you that for my
Should get friends.
For my 6 years on this
How many times I
committee,
brought it?
we've considered this option
For 6 years.
over and over and over again. And it probably was prior to my arrival that it was considered.
It was.
One of the greatest challenges is finding a board of directors to start and to take a hold of fiduciary responsibility for something like that, and so on and so forth. We actually went through a recruiting effort, maybe 2 years ago.
Can Can I ask something?
Yeah.
And I said when I went to the ProSAR meeting, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but the thing that I liked about the ProSAR committee was I was like, look at the amount of young people relative to me that are on that committee. And I loved seeing more young people get involved in government and the committees and all that. Made me feel good. But I also thought, how many people are on that board?
9?
Do we have another board in town that has 9 members?
I think the library is 11.
Why did,
It's library.
why, I mean, and I say this because could you start it off by cobbling off down to 5 members on your board and take 4 of your people to start as the fiduciary 501c3?
Certainly if there were people who are currently a part of this committee who wanted to do that. I know from my position, I don't have an interest in doing that. I sit on other charitable boards already. I've already kind of spread myself to different committees. This is unique in that I don't have fiduciary responsibility.
And I want to make sure you understand something. I'm kind of getting, I don't know, I'm not even in the March, but the departments that I've met with, and by the way, every department wants money.
Sure.
And I'm a big God helps those who help themselves. I don't want to put it back on you to get all your money. I think we will go down the path of seeing how we can structure this. I don't know how it's done, capital reserve fund, this, that. You've got our attention. Patty said it very succinctly. But all of these problems, there's not one size fits all to the answer. It comes in from several different sources. And unless I'm missing something, that 501c3 and having potential bequesting or whatever it is, that almost seems like low-hanging fruit for Parks and Rec compared to other departments who have that.
So let me address that real quick. So we tried 3 different times, with actually 3 different ProStar boards, if you will, with different members on it. Some are the same, but and all 3 times it fell apart. And one of the things that drives it to go, I don't want to do this, is you actually have to work. I mean, it's more than just, and I'm being very honest, it's more than just showing up to a meeting.
You gotta go solicit, you know, some
Case in
contributions.
point, we had a Friends of the Parks, if you will, 501c3, the Garlic Festival, I would have had them do the Garlic Festival. Now that has the potential, if done right, has the potential easily bringing in $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year that would have been into Parks and Rec for them to use for whatever maintenance things we had to do. Without that, it went to the Miracle Field folks because I didn't want it to leave Webster. So at least it's in a Webster bucket. But that's a perfect opportunity. But then that board has got to work that event. They got to set it up. They got to be there that weekend. They got to do all that work. It's a lot of work, and people look at it and say, do I really want to get involved in doing that? And that's been the hang.
And you know what, and I hate to say it, because I gotta leave in a minute, okay? I certainly think you got ideas here, and this is very much worth looking at. I think we are, not 60 days, but certainly as we get into the budget process, we'll clear up some of these things and find out if the trust fund is even in play to do what you want it to do. Certainly I want to get with Paul and make sure I understand what happened the last 6 years. And, you know, not only what happened the last 6 years with your department, but also how that money really went to other departments or whatever. And see if, I don't know if in a general fund account like Parks and Rec, you can set up a reserve. Doesn't, you know. But I also, I'm going to tell you right now, and I know Mark, you're heading out, I will definitely want to get with the board here. Alan Dungy's here, WAA. How many people are in WAA? 26?
Board members?
Yeah.
Right now at 20.
20, okay? I've made it a point to try to meet with every board, every committee, thing in town, right? There's a lot of involved people in town that almost really have, you know why Alan's here? He wants to get money for Empire Field, right? He's aligned with you. 20 people at WA.
I know, Al sat on our committee for years.
There you go, 9 people over there. Somehow,
probably
I gotta
Al was
believe
part of these
that out of
conversations.
29 people, plus some other boards like the Webster Youth Sports Council who also want field, somebody, if sold correctly, wouldn't be the initial 4 or 5 people to be that 501c3?
Well,
I don't know, I gotta believe. I'm a big volunteerism person. You've already volunteered. Is the work gonna be that much more?
You're going from.
Sorry.
I think we need to be careful.
I understand.
I think we need to be careful where we go with that and really look into how that would be structured and organized, because I'm not convinced that the Friends of the Parks could actually expend money on maintenance on town-owned buildings. I think
They
No, they can.
I think they have to give the money to the town, isn't it?
Yeah, they can do that. Other towns do it.
Even more,
I'm just not sure.
even something you could explore even further, they put a new fork in the law that if the money comes from private funds, prevailing rate wages do not apply. So when WAA sells a bunch of hot dogs and wants to do something at one of the parks, we're exempt from the prevailing rate wage laws. So, the Youth Sports Council is, obviously it was formerly Sheriff Fields, but there's certainly a good group of energy there, and they're all the leaders of the current youth sports programs in town. That encapsulates youth sports, it doesn't encapsulate the Arboretum and the parks and the other entities, but certainly there's some people there that might put forth the energy. I know Dave Eckler was timed out on COSAR, he couldn't, right, but it was a...
Yeah, he's gonna rejoin after, I think, a year. But
Well,
then
he's
he
now
went
fully
another
engaged in
direction.
the Youth Sports Council. Again, I think the Youth Sports Council is worth exploring. I mean, WAA is a 501c3. There's,
It is, okay.
I certainly think it's worth investigating. I just want to be careful where we go with, oh my gosh, we could get this money and we could do this, right? And the other thing I want to comment on is one of the things that I've seen is that the library does get donations through memorials and things like that, and I would really implore the library, maybe you want to mention this next meeting you go to, is that those donations should be made to the Friends of the Library, not the Town of Webster Library. We shouldn't be taking those donations in
We
the
aren't.
town.
We are.
It should be made to the Friends.
Yeah, it was going into one of those 501s. There's two 501c3s that feed the library, and I don't remember if it was the foundation or Friends, but
Foundation.
that's the money trail. It doesn't come to the town, it goes into the foundation and then, or Friends, and then they, for a very specific. They decide, yeah. It doesn't go into, it doesn't go into the general fund, they go into the abyss. It would be for specific
Charlie,
purposes.
can we verify that? Charlie, can we verify that those members of our board is that
Members of your board.
You're appointed, you can't.
right? We can't do that. Is that
What's the specific question, Jim?
the question is, can the appointed board write it down, the 9 of us, part of the 9, manage that 501 receipt?
Probably not.
Probably not. Can we verify that?
Yeah.
Maybe that.
Is it official of the town, you're not allowed to solicit?
The town,
private
yeah, the
funds?
town, no, I would say probably not, and really, it's been kind of like, no.
Okay. All right.
I've looked
No,
at
you
it
can't,
several times.
you can't, as Margaret said, you can't solicit private funds, also government funds. They're not for fund, not for profit. There are two different types of entities.
So, our primary ask was, can we take our surplus and fund this
That's a
capital?
different issue.
And it sounds like we are open to the conversation.
Yeah, I gotta look at that, because
Yeah.
the question is, these funds have been in existence for a long time, and they're set up, some are set up by law. The Parks Trust, as Paul, he doesn't, I don't know where it came from, he doesn't know where it came from, it's been around, so.
We're looking into it.
Setting up a reserve fund is bad.
No, reserve funds are different, but the trust fund, that raising of the park
And
trust
I understand that
fund
that's.
is concerned.
Yeah, I don't.
When do you think is an appropriate time for us to follow up with you regarding the reserve fund? I don't want 2020 to get away from us and then we miss out on that.
Like the supervisor said, we're going to do a budgeting starting May,
May.
end of May, beginning of June.
Maybe getting a line item in the budget for maintenance, not
Well,
even for,
and we're-
something.
Right. And the problem with doing it is, and I have to say, the problem with just putting that in the line item in the budget, we have to spend on tax lien, which many years is not even 2%. It doesn't give us a lot of wiggle room. When we look at the increases just in employee benefits and healthcare and all of that, it disappears quite quickly.
We just
So,
don't want
to me-
injury to happen here.
No,
and
but
then
and
come up to
neither,
town
believe
and-
me, we understand the seriousness of this. To me, perhaps the better vehicle to do this, rather than just putting it in a line item, is figuring out how to take, if there's a surplus, because I'm not going to say there always will be, but apparently there has
See you guys. I'm going over there now because I have all the audio-visual stuff. So they need me to, you know. You know, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
Thank you for your time.
Next time.
Pretty great.
Hey, before you go, I have a real,
I actually have spectacles, but you guys can just,
We're not going.
And I'm sorry, guys, that I was walking up. I gotta get the comments because I have all of the audio-video for tonight. And they're like, we need that. We gotta test it, and I'm like, okay.
There you go.
how many people use it? I'll give you a different way to do this. It's like we do with the ambulance. Add a $2 user fee onto your membership, add it, and have that user fee 6 days out. That way it will always be. So you raise the rates nominal on better. Raise it, whatever.
Okay, guys, listen up. We're not gonna do that.
It's not on the agenda. It's not,
No, but that's what I mean, so it's not the gym
it's
fund.
not here, it's not on the
This is
agenda.
actually a supplemental donation.
What is executive session?
Yes.
Executive session
Says
is
the agenda is subject to change.
Come in, your membership, I don't care what.
No,
you do.
no, she wants to discuss it next week. You guys, I'll have to get you guys a contract.
Okay.
I didn't realize Tom was gonna be.
It's not something you can let it fly.
So, and that goes.
Third date is done by Charlie.
Looked to me like it was a contract.
I used to have one.
Yeah, contract by the fourth.
That's exactly what we don't go into.
No, I thought that years ago, and.
That seemed like to me, I was like, oh, wait. I figure you're a lot smarter than I am.
Love to be able to have done that.
I mean, I told Mark and I had a nice chat.
No, I think we'll.
We use Rex for our meeting. And, you know, it has proven to be a fantastic facility. And so I think.
April 1st, no, we're good.
Okay, go first.
We're good. We can go, we'll discuss it. Do you have a copy of the contract?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go to it beginning of next meeting.
Okay, so we're gonna close this session. So moved. Aye.
But the hard part is, I mean, getting people to serve on boards and